Hello, my name's Mary Monro. My father, John Monro, joined the Royal Artillery as an officer cadet in 1932. He was sent to Hong Kong in 1937 and soon took command of a Chinese troop, where he became lifelong friends with his Chinese interpreter, Andrew Cheung. At the time of the Battle of Hong Kong, he was brigade major. After the surrender on Christmas Day 1941, Dad, along with 6,000 other men, was taken from Hong Kong Island to the mainland and imprisoned at Sham Shui Po, which was a barracks next to the sea. Conditions were shambolic at first, and Dad saw this as a golden opportunity to escape. But this was going against the advice of his senior officers. Hong Kong was crawling with Japanese troops and Chinese fifth columnists. And of course, beyond the border with China, there was an advancing Japanese army and no hope of disguise for a 6-foot-tall white man. Dad somehow managed to persuade 2 men to join him, and on the moonlit night of the 1st of February 1942, they made a raft for their kit out of planks and rope and set off at high tide, walking along a submerged breakwater and then swimming, dragging the raft between them, across the bay. It must have been exhausting. They then spent a week walking only at night through the steep, hilly scrub of the new territories, following a route that had been recommended to Dad by his faithful interpreter. But just before they reached the border with China, they were captured by bandits who interrogated them and relieved them of their valuables. They must have been in fear of their lives. These bandits were actually Chinese communist guerrillas who, surprisingly, once they were satisfied with their bona fides, guided Dad and his colleagues to a British military mission at Weizhou. These guerrillas would actually be a key part of the communication chain between British headquarters and the POWs in Hong Kong as the war went on. When they arrived in Weizhou, the Japanese had just left, leaving the town in smoking ruins and the inhabitants either terrified or murdered. It's really lucky that Dad didn't arrive 3 days earlier than he did. He would not have survived to tell the tale. From there, Dad's party journeyed on by train and truck and boat, 1,200 miles across China. They were destitute refugees, dodging the Japanese army, but they did eventually make their way to the wartime capital at Chongqing. Once they were there, Dad wrote up his adventures in a 90-page letter to his parents, explaining everything that had happened, as well as writing up various official military reports. Dad won the Military Cross for his brave escape, but he didn't stop there. He was made assistant military attaché and spent the next 18 months supporting and trying to liberate the POWs that he'd left behind in Hong Kong, before he was then posted to Burma, where he fought to retake the Tiddim Road in the monsoon of 1944. Freedom was a big thing for him, and it affected the way that he lived the rest of his life. He was one of the founders of the Riding for the Disabled Association, for example, liberating children from their physical limitations by putting them on horseback. I learned Dad's wartime story from his writings. He never spoke of it before he died when I was 18. And in any case, he'd left the army before I was born. He was a Shropshire farmer by then. When I read his papers, it wasn't enough for me. I wanted to understand him as a man. And so a few years ago now, I went to Hong Kong and I retraced his escape route across China. There's a commemorative battlefield trail on Hong Kong Island, which was really evocative. And rural China hasn't really changed, so I was able to picture him in that landscape. it brought me closer to him, and it helped me to appreciate his courage and also his suffering. This year, on the 75th anniversary of VJ Day, I'd like to see a greater awareness and a recognition that it was this day that was the end of the war. This day was when the fighting and the killing ended. It was this day when the world came to its senses at last. I hate to think how many people died between VE Day and VJ Day, but it feels wrong that their sacrifice isn't properly recognised and remembered, as I feel it should be. Thank you.